Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Kirby, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Scream with Ryan C. Showers podcast, where the film critic meets the Scream fan twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. So I'm sure you've heard M3GAN 2.0 did not do so hot at the box office a couple of weeks ago upon its release. The original made $30 million its opening weekend and went on to make over $90 million in the United States and then $180 worldwide. M3GAN 2.0 opened to $10 million in the domestic box office. And that is devastating. It's kind of a disaster for Blumhouse and for the M3GAN IP and franchise going forward. So this has sent shockwaves through the horror community, through the film industry in some respects. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about what happened. What the fuck happened with M3GAN 2.0 and why did it do so badly? Why didn't it take off and become a hit like the first one did? So we explored that. There are many reasons. And if you ask literally anybody, they will give you a different version of what they think happened. And we kind of touch a lot of what everybody says, but also we discuss the fact that Jason Blum has literally given interviews now discussing the flop of M3GAN 2.0. And first of all, how awesome it is that he did this. And I think it actually shows that he is somebody of virtue and of dignity and of honesty to do and to actually own up to potential mistake that he made here in terms of his production company. But so that is what this episode is. And we look at M3GAN 2.0 and we also project onto what this means for the future of horror movies, because, M3GAN 2.0, this came out at the end of June, and hey, in the middle of July, horror fans, a lot of Scream fans, have a very anticipated movie coming out, which is I Know What You Did Last Summer. And oh my God, the timing couldn't be worse in terms of the buzz. So we look at how it could impact I Know What You Did Last Summer, but also going forward, whether that's The Conjuring, Last Rites, the Black Phone 2, of course, coming out in October, and obviously Scream 7. The box office of Scream 7 is something I think about every minute of the day. So my friend Josh Reinhold joins me to discuss all of this, and he kind of applies wisdom and experience working in the industry. So then after that, we have a very special segment. Instead of having a Taylor Swift song of the day, we are going through and ranking all 11 of Taylor's albums. It's going to be me, of course, Ashley from Squirrel and Spud, and Mark Vieira, our friend who helps us select the Taylor Swift song every week. So please enjoy. Now, before I go any further, I need to thank the producers of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. They include Ashley Summers from the Squirrel and Spud shop. She and I host a Scream game every Wednesday on Instagram, so please check that out. I also need to thank TJ Jones, who comes from the Box Office Buds podcast. He is responsible for all of the graphic design of Scream with Ryan C. Showers in terms of new episode cards on social media promotion. So thank you so much to TJ for all he does. I also need to thank contributors Mark Karim, Mark Vieira, and Joey Velisi. Joey Velisi is the guy who writes the scripts for Scream with Ryan C. Showers. Episode 112, we wrote a Scream 7 script, which I read out loud, about the end of the Carpenter sisters storyline. And then the sequel to that was called Screams. It was centered around the legacy of Gail Weathers. That's episode 155. And Joey is currently working on the final Scream, which this is a product that is going to examine the relationship, the marriage of Mark and Sydney. Unlike the real Scream 7, this will feature Mark Kincaid as Sydney's husband, and she won't have a teenage daughter. Both of her daughters will be young, so it'll be much different than the real Scream 7 we're going to get. But that is going to be coming to the podcast late summer, early fall. So please tune in for that. I need to thank everybody over at Patreon. Thank you to everybody who subscribes to the Patreon at any and every tier. I'm an independent entity, so any bit of support that comes into the Patreon goes back into the podcast. Joining the Patreon gets you ad-free and early access to every episode, as well as the opportunity to join the community of the show. We have group chats across social media. In particular, Instagram is really the hub of the podcast community. More importantly, joining the Patreon is the vessel in which you would use to come onto the podcast, either in a one-on-one situation with me or a small panel. In addition, there's a guaranteed invite every month to a big group Zoom recording about a Scream topic. An exciting feature of the podcast is the audio commentary episodes. Every Scream fan knows what it was like listening to Wes Craven do the audio commentaries for the original trilogy and Scream 4, with Marianne Maddalena and Kevin Williamson and Patrick Lussier. And what I'm trying to do for my Patreon subscribers is I am going to be performing an audio commentary of a Scream or a Scream-related movie, one per month, every month. And my goal is to try to approach these as I'm doing deep analytical analysis about the characters, about the themes, about just general reaction. So it's something that I'm really proud of and I hope continues to be a cherished part of the podcast. So the commentary is available as a normal podcast episode for anybody to listen to like they would any other podcast, but it will also be available as a video watch along. So everybody, please go over to Patreon, subscribe to Scream with RCS. I would be eternally grateful. So I need to go through and thank everybody over at Patreon who is subscribed as a stab investor or a daddy/mama Ghostface. So the daddy/mama Ghostface of the Patreon are Carrie Tenney, Brett Janovich, Corey Wilson, and Stevie Shears. The stab investors include Allie, Amar Karim, Tamika Jones, David D., Garrison Nichols, Gustavo Mora, Jess Mariano, Joey Nobarini, aka The Vault, Josh Calamari, Josh Carr, Scream Queens podcast, both Josh and Justine, The Horror Project podcast, Justin Weir, Kevin Abner, Mark Vieira, PWO5, aka Philip Douglas, Quentin Harrison, and Sam Levy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this segment of Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers, and, he's been on so much this month. I feel like we should just call this, Scream with Ryan and Josh. So, everybody, please welcome Josh Reinhold. Hey, Josh.
Hi. Oh, my God. Somewhere Amar is, plotting my death.
Amar is not a vengeful person. He's probably just sitting in the corner, Oh my gosh. Well, so Josh was just on the special Gale Weathers episode, which was the kickoff to season 5 after we got through the premiere episodes with where we ranked all the characters. And then he happened to be on the Scary Movie episode the same week. And I think he was one of the best parts of that episode in terms of looking at Scary Movie in terms of the racial politics of that movie and how it was made. It was really, really well done. So go check out Josh on those episodes. But so Josh and I are sitting here today to discuss a huge piece of news that has been kind of reverberating through the horror community as it relates to M3GAN 2.0 and the disaster it had at the box office in its release. So, but before that, Josh was actually on an episode in May where we talked about the future of the Scream franchise. And he said something that inadvertently became kind of a meme. We were talking about Scream 7 versus Cat in the Hat, and oh my God, is this going to be a problem for Scream 7 with the box office and just the buzz in the same way that Rio did for Scream 4 all those years ago? And Josh said, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I don't think that anyone's really dying to see Cat in the Hat. So in the hashtag, I don't want to speak for everyone segment, Josh, now that we've seen the Cat in the Hat trailer, what are your thoughts? Do you stand by your I don't want to speak for everybody?
I will not only double, I will triple down. Funny enough, what some would call a D-girl fail, I didn't even realize that the movie was not live action. I assumed it was, and that they were sort of Bill Hader was going to be the face of this character, and this was going to be some new highly comedic Bill Hader stylized take on that IP. So when I saw the trailer, I was like, oh my God, I literally couldn't even focus long enough to I just zoned out. I mean, I don't think it looks good at all. It didn't get me at all excited. Yeah, so I would triple down on feeling like no one's sitting around waiting for that. Now, the one thing I will say, because I don't like to pretend to know it all, is that it is still going to be a family film coming out the same weekend as Scream 7. And while it may not be a massively anticipated one, it is a kind of dead zone time of year. So, and it's winter for a lot of people, speaking regionally. So, there could still be an aspect where that family film element comes in and parents are taking the kids just to escape the cold. And, so I don't want to say that I don't think that it could eat away at some of Scream 7's box office potential, but I definitely don't think it's going to be this massive event that like wipes Scream 7 off the map.
Right. So and I have to agree with a lot of what you said. Like I mean, I did know that it was animated. But I see you still don't know, in terms of just how things look and the vibe of things. And I just don't feel as though this is the type of movie, like, had it been the, like, a recreation of like the Mike Myers Cat in the Hat, where it was the live action, I think that would have been more threatening in a way. I don't know. But the fact that it's just like flat animation, I don't know. I mean, I will give the trailer an ounce of credit. There were like one or two shots I thought looked interesting and nice. But overall, it's just kind of a womp womp. Are Scream fans just being ridiculous by being afraid of this movie? And I kind of think after seeing the trailer, yes, I don't. And for all of the reasons that you mentioned too, like to me, I don't think that it's necessarily a shoo-in that Cat in the Hat would be ahead of Scream 7 in the ranking for the box office opening weekend now. I think that Scream 7 pulls out ahead. What do you think?
Yeah, like I'm quietly confident that that is a likely outcome. It is still so early, and so I feel like we don't even have a launch for Scream as far as a trailer. And I think it's really just going to boil down to how they put those campaigns together. And, we're about to talk about how you can't necessarily just count on, IP winning the day. So
Right.
I do think like execution is going to be important. I just will say that, obviously they launched as like a big film, like that, they launch in the way that a big movie with a huge marketing spend launches, with a long runway. Whereas, we know Scream, they're probably going to condense their campaign into like 3-4 months max, right? So, I mean, to be determined. I think right now it's like if you're a Scream fan who's rooting for Scream 7 to open big and at number 1, I don't think that what we've seen so far is like cause for concern.
Right. And, basically the whole genesis of the I don't want to speak for everybody is like this idea of like, I think the proper context was like, are people really excited? Are people asking for this movie? And I think that there is a specific difference between a Nev Campbell Scream 7 directed by Kevin Williamson versus a Cat in the Hat. Like, who is really asking for a Cat in the Hat? And this kind of will lead into our discussion later on in terms of like, I think that question actually that you posed in that episode all those weeks ago is actually a good indication of will a film do well? Is if people are asking for it, and is there a genuine kind of need for it in the culture? Is there a want for it? And I don't know if Cat in the Hat really fulfills that, even for little kids. So
yeah,
I don't know.
I guess this is also like something where you and I, being like gay men without children,
Yes.
it's like kind of hard. Like I don't have my like finger on the pulse of like what books from my childhood are still like relevant to children today. And I'm sure like parents our age probably read Dr. Seuss to their kids still, but I don't know. Like speaking about even the Michael Myers era. Is it Michael Myers? That always weirds me out. Yeah,
I think Mike Myers, but yeah.
Mike Myers. Okay, yeah. It always sounds wrong. I'm
does.
picturing a killer. No, but I think like speaking about the Mike Myers era, like I didn't give a flying fuck about his Cat in the Hat. Like Cat in the Hat was not something that I like held dear as a child. So I mean, I know there might be people out there who did, so maybe they feel like way differently about all of this, but I very much like, I don't even think I saw his. And I was probably a teenager when it came out.
Right.
Kind of an odd brand, and I think maybe kind of tough to like capture anyone beyond parents and children unless you like do something really interesting with it, and in the way that like Mattel is developing a dark R-rated Barney.
See, I think that like, it's actually, you just made a really good point, is like, parents and children. That is the market for Cat in the Hat. Whereas there's no really overlap with Scream 7. Like, had it been a live action with Bill Hader as Cat in the Hat, like Mike Myers, then I could see it bleeding out into millennials, whatever, teenagers. That would make more sense. But I just don't think that the audience who's going to see Scream 7 or going to be excited by Scream 7 is also just like, dying to see an animated version of Cat in the Hat with Bill Hader just giving the voice. Like that doesn't make sense to me. But the box office market is just so unpredictable. It's just so crazy. Like I feel like horror fans, we've had like a huge dose of like humbling medicine over the past couple of weeks in terms of like feeling like, we know exactly how things are going to go. Josh, another thing that we've been kind of musing is is this and this, like, I don't want to speak for everybody, but like, random person on the internet, you don't know everything, and you aren't, how can you be so certain about something when literally, M3GAN 2.0 just came out and crashed all expectations of this being a really profitable sequel after such hype and buildup. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's for me, I just find it very frustrating, the sort of armchair quarterbacking that goes on with any topic, really, but specifically the industry. It's like, I didn't hear a ton of people, and I'm not as dialed in as you are, but I wasn't even like, I feel like I hear through our Patreon, like, what a good sort of hodgepodge mix of like horror fandom thinks about things as like they approach, and then certainly in the wake of them coming out and whatnot. But like, correct me if I'm wrong, but there wasn't a ton of like forecasting a huge box office bomb for M3GAN. Like, nobody was necessarily going like, there's no way, like, this genre switch is crazy, they should never have done it. And nobody was necessarily calling out the summer of it all. I think like Final Destination, having opened, what was that, like a month prior, it still
Right.
kind of felt like summer, like a summer film, because really the sort of summer season kicks off at the end of April as far as like the box office is concerned. Certainly by May, we're just like in it, because it is always so crowded, and the bigger films like do tend to have to spread out so that they can all kind of capture the most. So yeah, I do. I just think it's interesting that people kind of show up Monday morning and they're like, well, of course, like as if they, are research experts who like work for the companies that literally do this for the studios, and that the studios consult during the lead up to these releases. So it's
Right.
like ultimately everything that Jason Blum like himself went on the town and owned about why M3GAN probably failed, those are not things that they were not conscious of and that they weren't aware could backfire. But the bottom line is they still like took the big swing of like
Right.
genre bending a summer release and like leaning into the sort of kind of gay icon quality of like what M3GAN became in the wake of the first film, and it just like didn't work out. But it's not like they didn't know that they
Right.
were taking all those risks, you know?
Let's just fully transition now into the M3GAN discussion, because like this is so weird to talk about. And like I almost would, if like this was like the full episode, I would like recreate the Hillary Clinton book of 2017. What happened? What happened? Colon M3GAN 2.0. M3GAN 2.0. But like, so M3GAN, the first film, came out in between Scream 5 and 6, and it had a big success. It actually made more at the domestic box office than Scream 5 did, which is hard to believe. So I'm just going to recap the money that it made. So the domestic total run was 95 million, and then the worldwide gross was 180 million, and it made about 30 million for its opening weekend back in January of 2023. And, then of course Scream 6 came out. It did better domestically, not as great worldwide. M3GAN 2.0 comes out, and it's developed over a couple of years. People, the anticipation builds, because the first movie did so well, it made all this money, was a huge success out of the blue, had a very organic social media presence and a social media hook. People got interested. There were a lot of Halloween costumes. M3GAN kind of like was forced into the culture in a way that gave people a sense like, oh, she could be like a full-on horror IP. There could be 5 M3GAN, 6 M3GAN movies made over the next 10 years, almost like a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael Myers or a Ghostface. And it's not easy to create those horror villains, but somehow M3GAN seemed to have. And like, she almost resembled like an updated AI technology version of Chucky in a way. So I think that like people had really baked in expectations based off of the way the first movie just took off for some unknown, unexpected reason. And because of that, everyone just expected M3GAN 2.0 to do just as well because of just the way that the culture has propped her up. I mean, she's, intertwined with RuPaul's Drag Race. She's, all over the culture all the time. Like, so, I think that like this was a massive shock to everybody. The fact that it only made 10 million. And Jason Blum had said on the podcast you mentioned, The Town, he said that they were tracking 40, then 30, then 20. Almost within a week, they were losing, each day they were losing 10 million as tracking went on of the week of the release. It's a huge shock. And it just kind of made me question a lot about the industry and about my expectations. And I realized through this process that I must not know the things that I think that I know, because this is just such a devastating disappointment for Blumhouse and just a huge wake up call. And we don't really know what happened. There's a bunch of different theories, and I think that a smart person would say it's a little bit of everything. So,
Yeah.
Josh, what are your thoughts here?
I agree. I think everything that Jason Blum talked about on The Town, which I've already sort of referenced, it was like three key things. It was just the summer release, thinking that M3GAN was like Superman and they could kind of turn her from bad to good. And then also, an organic nature to the way that they pushed, like they chased virality this time with M3GAN, right? Like it felt more forced. It felt like they were trying to gin up something that just kind of happened as a happy accident the first time. And I mean, this plagues every marketing campaign on every movie at every studio. Like everyone dreams of like the organic M3GAN like first film moment with the dance and like that going viral on TikTok, or like the Bloody Mary Wednesday moment, right? But people sit in meetings and they try to actually like create these. They try to come up with ideas. And once in a blue moon, like one of those ideas in one of those meetings becomes an actual true like viral moment. But more often than not, those moments happen as very happy accidents. So that kind of makes sense to me. Like you and I talked about it. And when the initial trailer dropped, like I was in mostly because of the Oops, I Did It Again and like Britney Spears aspect. I'm a huge Britney fan. So that was like my queen in my teens and, love her forever. Hope she's happy. But, but the truth is like that moment, like sort of took me, someone who saw the first M3GAN, didn't think it was very good, and had no real like love for M3GAN becoming a franchise whatsoever. And kind of, it almost like tricked me into feeling like, well, this is an event. I mean, they're using Oops, I Did It Again. I have to see this film.
Yeah.
But that's not going to happen to everybody that watches that trailer. And I think like what that speaks to is the first film just wasn't that good. And so, it was kind of, to stay in the Britney lane, not a girl, not yet a woman. Like it wasn't really like scary enough for a lot of like the core horror fan base. And then it wasn't like quality enough for people who are looking for more like elevated horror, right? So I just don't think that in the wake of the first film, despite its actual success, because it did seize upon the moment, that people were like jonesing for another M3GAN. Right. So I think like what they did, which is really commendable, they actually like developed what I thought was a sequel that was better than the first film. I enjoyed M3GAN 2.0 far more than I enjoyed the first M3GAN. But in doing that, they turned even further away from like a core horror fan base, and they kind of made an action comedy.
Right.
And I think that what's tricky about that is like if M3GAN 2.0 were not released as a sequel and it was just called something else, and they just put that trailer out with Allison Williams and kind of tackling this like AI concept, I think you probably could have brought more people into the fold. But it's always tricky when something's a sequel and people maybe like who are not horror people didn't see M3GAN because it's just not their kind of movie. They're like not going to run out and see a sequel just because it's suddenly not horror, right? Because they don't feel like they're in the loop. So I just think it was kind of like this unfortunate sequence of events. And the part that like makes me sad is just that, the creatives involved, like Jason Blum and Universal, they like obviously really took a chance on this and it backfired. And it's an unfortunate thing when that happens in Hollywood, because it usually causes everybody to revert to what feels like more dependable, and that typically ends up being stuff that feels a lot more generic.
Right. Like, not to, put it too fine a point on it, but like, Jurassic World just came out, and that is a very generic movie that is doing really, really well. And it's just like, and Jason Blum talked about this in that podcast, like why it doesn't make sense why some movies do well and some movies don't. And we'll never really know why the first M3GAN did well and the second one was a total flop. But there are a lot of guesses we can take. But just to point out, like, Josh said it, I agree. I actually think M3GAN 2.0 is the superior superior movie. I think it's actually a really smart script. I think it touches a lot of themes about technology and the development of AI that may even go above a lot of people's heads. Like there is some like almost like wonky discussions about
Totally.
the development of technology in that movie. I think it's very strong. I liked a lot of the character development. I really liked the movie. I had actually had a great time going to see it. I'm so glad I went and saw it in theaters because I thought the first movie was just fine. It was generic. It was just kind of blah. And maybe that's why it was a success. Who knows? But, so basically the three things that have been talked about in terms of why the movie didn't do so well is the genre swap from horror to action. But I don't even know if I fully get that because the first movie, it wasn't it was horror, I guess. It was horror thriller, but there were still those discussions about technology and like almost sci-fi, in that movie. So I don't see it as such a huge leap from from A to B.
Yeah,
But
well,
so
I think if you look at the marketing as
mhm,
opposed to the actual film,
yeah.
and that's like was a lot of the horror fans that I come across through your Patreon, like that is like one of the biggest complaints about the first film is like it wasn't scary enough. It didn't actually feel like a horror film. So there was a little bit of a bait and switch that went on with the first marketing campaign, which honestly was brilliant of them because I think that if they had designed a trailer that was truer to what the actual film was, it never would have opened the way that it did.
I just, it's just really hard for me. So, with this point, it's just really hard for me to believe that people who liked the first movie would have seen a second Megan had it been drenched in horror, had it been, in Dracula's castle with a chainsaw and like,
Right.
chase scenes all over. Like, had it been that. Like, it's just hard for me to believe that people who liked the first movie enough to be open minded to see a second one, looked at the trailer and thought, this doesn't look like horror. I'm going to skip it. Like that just doesn't make sense to me. I think that it's more so the other two things, which are the summer release date and the marketing just being maybe a bit too niche. Because I thought the marketing was fun. Perhaps it was targeting or embracing the gay icon, and I would
Yeah.
argue the forced gay icon. Even like I was on the box office buds, talking about Megan, and I'm gay, and it's just like
Right.
my friend Joey Valisi, he was interviewed by the Hollywood Reporter about Megan because he's gay. He had published a gay book, or an LGBT queer book. There's almost like this weird, like manufactured gayness about Megan that I think worked against the movie instead of letting it just come naturally. Like there's a reason like why all the gays naturally go to Gail Weathers, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to, ooh, Gail Weathers must be a gay icon. Like it happens naturally. And I think that was part of the flaw in the
Mm.
marketing campaign. But I think that so I think there's that element of it being too niche, but also I just think that releasing a horror movie in the middle of summer, I don't care that it's Pride Month. Again, see above about the marketing being too niche. And like we didn't need to do that. Like I just think horror movies when they're competing with big blockbuster movies like Jurassic Park, like the Brad Pitt movie, like whatever else, I just feel as though we don't belong being released theatrically in summertime. We a setup for a failure when there's a lot going on in the summer and the priorities are different. I think that, and this is why, like, I've been very conscious about when a Scream movie is released. They've always done well in the winter months,
Yeah.
and the Halloween movies did best when they were releasing, in October. It makes sense. So, what are your thoughts, Josh?
I agree. And I think that they did this very consciously. I've said it before on the podcast, I will say it again. The people that actually look at the landscape and decide where to place a film,
Mhm.
they're doing it down to like a science. And I think that what my gut tells me is that there was enough genuine belief behind Megan and launching her like essentially as like a superhero character in summer that was going to pay off. I think that they thought that the movie was going to blow the first one out of the water and be huge. And the marketing campaign felt, it carried that kind of like cockiness. And that's inherent to the character, but I just genuinely was like, it felt like they were fully, confident that this was going to be a massive event. And unfortunately, that just didn't happen. And I don't
Mhm.
know. We kind of talked about this via text. Like, I was a little bit off put by the cockiness of the campaign. And I think that part of that for me boiled down to the fact that I didn't think it had been earned by the quality of the first film. So it was just kind of like, it felt like they were like, it felt like it was like, you know, Ava Max trying to be like, I'm basically Madonna level, like icon And it's like, no, you're not. And it just kind of felt like that with how they were positioning M3GAN. It was like, I don't, sure, but like, no, as far as everything, like the pre-trailer like features that they'd have at the theater, like the drag race spot, the dance routine at Pride in Los Angeles. Like I was just like, okay, wow, like we're really like proclaiming M3GAN like a cultural icon in a way that I just, again, if the first movie had been a little bit better, then maybe that would have rang more true.
It all seemed very premature, in my opinion, to declare all these things based off of one movie. And that's kind of like where I want to transition to next, because this was also brought up to me, like not only from the Box Office Buds when I was interviewed there, but other places, like this idea that like M3GAN was this established IP. And like, I don't know, what's your opinion? In my opinion, I feel like IP, IP isn't just a success of one movie, because one movie can be a one-hit wonder, and versus a franchise that has shown consistently over multiple movies or multiple entities and products that it can hit over the fence home runs. It's Scream has, every film but four has been insanely profitable.
Yeah.
And that's not M3GAN. M3GAN having one movie that was great, or profitable, does not a franchise make. And this kind of applies to a discussion about I Know What You Did Last Summer. As fans look at M3GAN and just kind of wrestle with the projections for I Know What You Did Last Summer. I know the first I Know What You Did Last Summer was a massive hit. It made tons of money. For a long time, it was one of the highest grossing slashers ever before, kind of the new era, before Halloween came out. And, the first movie did well. The second movie didn't even make back its budget. And the third movie was straight to a video. Amazon TV show was a huge flop, canceled after season 1. So, if you look at I Know What You Did Last Summer, of the 4 entities so far, it's 1 for 4. And then you have this new movie coming out, and people are kind of shaky now, especially in light of M3GAN. And we can look at M3GAN, they had 1 movie hit so far, and before, otherwise it was untested. There was nothing else to really base it on.
Yeah, my thoughts about I Know What You Did Last Summer, and I've said this to you privately. I mean, I think that the first one being as successful as it was had a lot to do with Scream. Scream ushered in a new era for the slasher, featuring the hottest TV stars of the time. And I Know What You Did Last Summer, like very much followed in its footsteps and captured that same, like this was the early 2000s. It was TRL, like, this was exactly like pop culture at the time. And I think that is why the first one was as successful as it was. I realized in rewatching 1 and 2 last week or the week before, I honestly don't think I've ever watched those movies more than once, personally. Like, I think I saw them like once they like hit movie stores or whatever, like rented it for like a weekend or whatever. But certainly, like, I had memories of moments in the movies, but it's not like iconic to me. It's not something that I return to. And I know that there are people out there for who that is true, but I just think that I Know What You Did Last Summer in general does not have the same core dedicated fan base that Scream does.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I think I said, and I don't want to like pretend to know everything, because that, as we talked about earlier, that's really annoying when people do that. I think I said I thought that it would open 20 to 25 because I was getting a sense just in my gut, like it actually feels like they're kind of pulling this off in a way that I was very skeptical of before like the marketing campaign began. And then of course when Final Destination came out, I was like, well, if that movie can open to that turd, can open to whatever it was, at $50+ million, like, then I don't see why a movie that's a lot less ridiculous, like, wouldn't. Because I think audiences are, in general, like they do want quality, right? And Final Destination, you can argue that one was high quality for the franchise, whatever, but I still didn't think it was great. So yeah, I genuinely like kind of drank the Kool-Aid post Final Destination, but now with what's happened with M3GAN and kind of what we've seen from like early projections, it's looking like it'll certainly be under 20, like potentially more like 10 to 15. And none of this can ever be certain. But yeah, I guess I got a little like swept up in the marketing myself.
Yeah.
And
Well,
people aren't as like itching for more I Know What You Did Last Summer.
can I just directly ask? Because like this is even a contested issue online. Like there are some people who look at the I Know What You Did Last Summer marketing so far and think, great, love it. And there are other people who think this is trash. They're doing everything wrong. I don't think they're doing anything. I don't see anything offensively bad. I think like Jennifer Love Hewitt is really pulling her weight in helping market this movie and really try to get people excited about it. Do you think the marketing so far is for I Know What You Did Last Summer is successful?
I think it is. My gut sense is that the film and the casting is not coming together in a way that, to use the same expression, feels like an event that earns the like reintroduction of this IP. The young cast, like they're not popping the way, in my opinion, that Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera did like in the early marketing for Scream 5. Like I just think those two like on screen, you just go like, it felt bold, it felt exciting, it felt new, and it got you like pumped to go see Scream 5. I don't feel that way about this one, and I feel like we're really landing in a place where everyone's like focusing on the legacy, people being back, but it just seems obvious to me from the marketing that they're going to have like, you know, little screen time.
Well,
And
can I
yeah.
just jump in there and say, like, in terms of I Know What You Did Last Summer, I think that, like, going back to our question about Cat in the Hat, did people ask for I Know What You Did Last Summer? And I think that, like, it's weird because some people, I think, did. I think the audience for I Know What You Did Last Summer is not as broad as Scream. And like, let's talk about Final Destination because I think Final Destination left everybody in shock and awe because it was such a weird result for a movie that, frankly, in my opinion, and Josh's opinion, isn't very good.
Mhm.
It's just for a Final Destination to blow the box office up like that. It's just so weird. A higher opening than any Scream movie had ever done. But Final Destination has a consistent history of doing well. Every single film has done somewhat okay at the box office. Unlike I Know What You Did Last Summer. Unlike M3GAN now. And I think it just kind of goes to show there are successful, fully fledged franchises, which are the Screams, the Halloweens, the Final Destinations, and then these other movies that are in a bucket that may have had some success, but they aren't at the same level or don't have the same consistency of success with money per se.
Totally. I agree. You know what? I think about Final Destination and I recognize that I am not the audience and I don't want to sound like I'm speaking down to the audience or anything. Like there's plenty of stuff that's like fairly low grade that I eat up. Like I love Love Island. Like, I'm not sitting here being like a snob. I feel like Final Destination is like very much kind of like a Fast and the Furious. Like there are these franchises where people know exactly what they're going to get when they show up and they enjoy that. Right. And so I guess like that is maybe part of why it was able to capture that kind of success because it just sort of is what it is and it doesn't have to like prove itself in any type of way because people that like it's just the same thing and they want that again. I think I Know What You Did Last Summer and Scream live in a little bit of a different universe where it's like they're constantly having to like justify their existence by coming up with a reason to continue on. And with 7, obviously, like returning to Nev, the good news is that's like actually appealing to the core fan base of Scream. So they're not like alienating the fan base maybe in the way that like taking M3GAN further away from horror might have been doing.
Right.
So I think that that's good, but I just don't know whether I Know What You Did Last Summer. I don't know. I just, in my gut, like, I don't know why I feel this way, but I just feel like it's just not a franchise that people hold as near and dear. So it's not going to shock me if it performs, but I genuinely hope it performs. I hope that for everybody involved. Love Freddie Prinze Jr. and I love Jennifer Love Hewitt and I would love for the movie to be great. And so even if the opening is like mild to good, but not bad enough to be considered a bomb, they still maybe consider continuing that franchise on and developing those characters and like getting rich and deep in there. But we'll have to kind of see. It's feeling just like reading the room right now, it's feeling like it's turning in the other direction, unfortunately.
And so, like, let's just say, so the tracking we have right now, we heard over this past weekend, is 18 million to open and about 90 million worldwide total. And 18 million, if it makes 18 million in the domestic box office, I would count that as a success. I think that's a good number. That's almost double of what M3GAN made. So if that happens, I think that's a good thing, especially for a franchise that isn't Scream. And I think it's unfair in a lot of ways to compare I Know What You Did Last Summer to Scream, because yes, they both came out at the same time originally, and they have a strong overlap in fan base. In fact, I would probably say like all of the I Know What You Did Last Summer fans are Scream fans. This is not all the
Right.
Scream fans are I Know What You Did Last Summer fans. So, I'm really hoping that if it gets around 20, I think that's great. And I just don't want people to be unnecessarily harsh to the movie, unless if it is terrible. But if it turns out to be a quality movie that does the legacy actors in a good way, I don't want people to be mean to it. I do hope it does well. So fingers crossed. And we, can analyze this more after the fact, but I just hope it does better than M3GAN. My God. So one last thing I want to talk about is in the podcast interview that Jason Blum did. Listener, I don't know if you're completely up to speed on what happened with Jason Blum, but basically the Monday or Tuesday after M3GAN's release, with this really awful box office result, which is literally a 20 million drop from 1 to 2 in terms of opening weekends. The first one made 30 million, the second one made 10. That is devastating, especially for the cockiness that Josh illustrated on the filmmaker's behalf earlier. He went on to this podcast and was very blunt, very candid and honest, and kind of owned up to the fact, like, yeah, we had a huge flop here, and really was humble about potentially the reasons why it flopped. So I give Jason Blum, first of all, just massive credit as a CEO in the industry to have the humility and to have the courage to be honest like that. And that's something that really appeals to me, just as a viewer, as somebody who knows how crooked Hollywood is in a lot of respects and how scummy a lot of the people are. But Jason Blum, every once in a while, he'll pop up and do something like this that makes me think, oh, so he's kind of a real, genuine human being under there.
Yeah.
Josh, do you have anything you want to add here before we go anymore?
I agree with that. I was really pleasantly surprised listening to that interview. Most of the time, heads of companies are in sort of PR war rooms figuring out the spin when a film opens poorly, or they're just, doing their Sunday box office calls, with their head down and kind of like with whiskey in their coffee. But, I think for him to come out and kind of use it as a moment to own, what happened, and then also take a step back and be like, we have a lot to sort of figure out, because as a company, we've had a rough year and we're looking at the things that are working, and it's very much not the things that are our bread and butter and what we do. Right. So like, you can just tell that he's aware, and that Blumhouse is probably having sort of an internal post-mortem as far as why, the movies that they've released this year in general have not really been working, and what they could do differently. And like, it's interesting because I think what's sad to me about like M3GAN 2.0 and Drop as like another one, I think that, both of those I would rank like quite high on the like Blumhouse quality scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a bummer as a fan, and someone who's even worked with them, that particularly those two films really didn't open, because I really love Chris Landon. I think he's super talented, and I think Drop was his best film yet. And, I was sort of converted into a fan of M3GAN by its sequel, in spite of the first installment. So it's a bummer when you see movies that are better, and that's something that Jason even pointed out, that M3GAN 2.0 got like a B+ cinema score, which for horror is like an A+, right. Like grading on a scale. And so it's like, it's sad as fans, and I know you agree with me about this, that it's like, when good movies get made and companies take chances, like both Drop and M3GAN 2.0 felt like expensive Blumhouse movies to me. They certainly were not your like under $4 million or like $1 million one location type vibe. They felt big, and they were good.
And they were smart, which is something that Blumhouse films don't often get called, which is they were very like, rigorous and like shooting above their own weight in some respects. And that's why they are two of the best Blumhouse movies, not only this year, but like, probably like of all time, if you look at the aggregate.
and anchored by great talent too. You
Mhm.
know, like that makes such a big difference, and that is costly to a film. It's harder to get an Allison Williams because she costs more, right? Than
Right.
if you just go out and get someone like the actress who led the new Final Destination film, right? So
The shade, I love it. But all this kind of combined though. So what Jason Blum said in that podcast interview was like he had like a really interesting diagnosis of a post-COVID box office landscape, which actually makes a lot of sense to me. He basically said that like after the industry kind of came back from the dead during, the 2020 through 2022, to really be successful, things are hit or miss and there's no real explanation for it. And the key to the movies that are successful, like when audiences show up, they really show up in huge numbers. It's overwhelming. But when they don't show up, it's really underwhelming. There's no in between. And part of the equation here is the movies have to feel like an event. And that actually makes so much sense to me. Like both Scream 5 and Scream 6 were made into events. Scream 7 is like the formula is there for it to be tailor made into a big event. Final Destination was a big event. Sinners was a big event.
yeah, but to be fair, like M3GAN 2.0, they tried to make that a big event. And I know what you did last summer. They're trying to make that a big event. It's just like you can't necessarily do it. Like there has to be this sort of magical coming together of all the things. Like you can put all the work in, cut all the right spots, like have placement in all the best places to reach your core demos, but like there is this X factor of like, is it resonating? Do people respond the way you want them to respond? Does it actually become eventized, or are you just kind of throwing a 40th birthday party, inviting 500 people and 2 people show up, right? Like, it's like, I think it's like they're doing the things to try to make these things events, but there's this kind of intangible element that if it's not there, people are just kind of like, it's that difference between like, yes, I'm going, or I'll see it on streaming, right?
Right. And I guess, like, to end this conversation, it's just interesting to say to basically everything you just said, I agree with. Like, it's like what makes an event successful versus what not. And it's also just thinking about this, like, in the long term. Like, in some ways, it makes sense. If you're going to the movie theater, if you're leaving your house to go to the movies, it's because you want to be part of the cultural conversation, the moment, things that everyone's talking about that's so cool, that is just so appealing, you can't help but not go. Like, it's like going to the club, going to a party, like you said, versus just catching something that's good quality, but at home. So that makes total sense. But like the idea that like, I think like the best example of an event over the past year, and it's ongoing because we have a second movie coming out, is Wicked. They made Wicked into such a prolonged, big moment in the culture. I mean, we're both massive Wicked fans. You won't find bigger Wicked fans than Josh and I, but if that is the litmus test for what you have to do to ensure success at the box office, like that is exhausting. You can't, I can't imagine having to do the Wicked promotion for every move to
Well,
have a huge profit.
also represents hundreds of millions of dollars of investment. And
Yeah.
so obviously, like, you can't do that for drop, right? Even Sinners had a robust like marketing budget especially for a pseudo genre film, but it was Ryan Coogler, right? Like they were betting on their filmmaker, and they bet extremely wisely. It's really hard. And I do think that the film industry, like, I know this because like this is why it's very hard to find work in it, because in a post-COVID world, it's almost like you have to earn, like you're saying, you have to earn people like leaving their home and going and having a theatrical experience. And less, especially for smaller films, people are just kind of like, why would I go spend $30 like when I can just watch it in 2 months when it comes up on whatever streaming service the studio is a part of. So it's really tricky. And with Wicked, they can be bold, they can be big, they can be like, no, we're not releasing it for half a year, and you're gonna have to pay $40 for it and for another several months, right? Like, you can't do that for drop.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think Josh is right here as it pertains to I Know What You Did Last Summer and M3GAN. They were both kind of promoted as events, but in my opinion, I don't think every movie that comes out can be an event. And I think that's why M3GAN didn't do so hot, is because it's not an event. I don't necessarily think I Know What You Did Last Summer is an event in the same way that like Final Destination 6 or Scream 7 would be. So Jason Blum, I think, is actually very smart for talking about and thinking about movies and their success at the box office now as how much they are made into an event. And so looking beyond even I Know What You Did Last Summer, because that could go one of two ways, right? But in terms of between I Know What You Did Last Summer now, July, through Scream 7, which is obviously going to be an event, right? With Nev Campbell returning, Kevin Williamson, Matthew Lillard, Courtney Cox, you have like all the originals, you have the Sydney and her daughter and her family. Like there is so much eventization that is going to happen with Scream 7. It's unreal. And I think Paramount has proven the fact that they can make an event out of Scream with both Scream 5 and Scream 6. They have this shit locked down. So, but let's just, for argument's sake, think about two new releases that are coming out in the fall that could possibly be events. And I think that could be better suited for events than, say, M3GAN 2.0, that clearly had some marketing issues and a bad release date. So let's talk about The Conjuring Last Rites, which is the final movie that Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are going to be in as Ed and Lorraine Warren from the Conjuring movies. And so people, just for perspective, like the Conjuring movies, I think that we forget because, you know, the Conjuring isn't really in the Scream realm, but the Conjuring has an enormous amount of credibility with general audiences. They made tons of money. So I'm just going to just read you the earnings for the Conjuring movies thus far. So the first Conjuring made $137 million domestic, $119 million worldwide. Holy fuck. Okay. The Conjuring 2, $2 million domestic, and worldwide $321 million. Holy shit. In fairness, Scream 6 did do better than this. That's interesting. Okay. And then, of course, The Conjuring 3, which is The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. Not as much because this came out literally in the middle of COVID. Like this was releasing just as the vaccines were really starting to kind of get the groove on. So, and this came out on HBO Max at the same time. This was a mess of a release, and it didn't have as good of reviews, but it made $65 million domestic and worldwide $206 million. That's interesting. And on top of that, you have 9 movies total in this franchise, all that have done pretty well in terms of, you know, the Annabelle movies, The Nun. They've made at least, you know, between the lowest movie in this Conjuring universe is $54 million domestic, and then that ranges up to, you know, $117 million with The Nun. So they've all done really, really well. So I think that as it pertains to The Conjuring, I think that this is the type of movie that is going to be an event, especially because this is allegedly the last of the movies with Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson. And I mean, it's literally in the title, The Last Rites. So I think that they can market the shit out of that, the fact that it is the final chapter of that we're going to see the Warrens in. And it will be an event. And I think that it will make a lot of money. I hope it does extremely well. But I think this is an example, like we were talking about with, you know, the Final Destinations, the Halloweens, the Screams that have had, you know, 6+ movies in their franchise. They've shown that whenever a movie comes out, people show up, people care, and like it has been successful as a long-running IP. It is an event when one of these movies comes out, unlike M3GAN 2.0. So here's another movie that's coming out this fall, another Blumhouse, The Black Phone 2. So I wasn't the biggest fan of The Black Phone, but if you look at The Black Phone, it could very much be like a M3GAN 2.0, or, you know, it could make the turn of M3GAN 2.0. So like M3GAN, it made $90 million domestic. Opening, it made $23 million, so under M3GAN. That's interesting. And worldwide, it made $161. So it made even less than M3GAN, the original. So, I mean, The Black Phone isn't necessarily the type of movie you look at and think, ooh, franchise. Like after the first one, I kind of struggled, like, what will the storyline of the sequel be? But, you know, I will say the trailer for The Black Phone 2 looks fucking incredible. I can't wait to see it. And I didn't even really like this original movie. So, but regardless, you know, like M3GAN, you know, it's not an IP yet. You know, it's kind of untested. They had one successful movie, you know, 3 years ago. That's a long time in some respects. So, you know, this could end up being like, you know, if we put so many eggs in the Black Phone 2's basket, you know, it could end up being like a M3GAN 2.0 where it was a one-hit wonder, or the first one did really well and the second one doesn't. Or it could be made into an event. It has a really prime Halloween release date. that will serve it well, much better than fucking June did for M3GAN. So I think that the Black Phone 2 could be an event. It just depends. I feel like whenever you're on when you're on movie 2 and you're on the first sequel of an IP, I think it's like a flip of a coin, whether it's going to successfully launch and make as much money as the first one did and leave people like the first one did, to then go on. And I think you can have your gravitas as a franchise once you've hit movie 3 or 4 and you've all had successes for all of them. It's not just like, ooh, we made one movie and we're so great. That is the M3GAN, that is the I Know What You Did Last Summer potential, right? So, we'll see. Is the Black Phone 2 an event? I don't know. My gut says no, but I still think it's going to make money. I don't know. M3GAN has me spooked. I have more confidence in The Conjuring, The Last Rites, because like Scream 7, you can market the fact that, oh, this is Neve Campbell's return with her daughter, and Kevin Williamson, the original writer, is getting the first chance to direct. And with The Conjuring, you can say, oh, it's the Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga. It's their last time. That's what events are made out of. I don't know what the Black Phone 2, what their point of view would be as an event, as opposed to just getting horror fans excited and everybody shows up because it's October and Halloween season. So, it could be an event. I think that the pieces are on the board for chess for it to make a successful event. But, for me, it's not as obviously an event in the same way that The Conjuring is, in the same way that Final Destination was, and Halloween was, and Scream is. So there you go. So Josh, as a final wrap-up question here, what was it that, if you had to say one or two things, or concisely, why did M3GAN flop? In the words of Hillary Clinton, what happened? So what happened?
I think summer, and I think like the first film wasn't good enough.
Okay, interesting. I would agree about summer, and I would say summer plus marketing being too niche. I think that there was some dislodge in the marketing apparatus that didn't connect in the same way that the first one did. And not just
they
the
left all
TikTok
the
dance.
heteros behind.
God damn you, straight people! Is this so?
No,
are you
it's like straight people matter too. Marketing campaign, like it was too on the nose, like chasing the gays. And we are a big force, like we should not be underestimated, but I think they needed to bring some other people into the fold on that one.
So are we saying if Kamala would have won, M3GAN 2.0 would have gone 50 million? Is this what we're saying? I'm just teasing. So
A phenomenon. Yeah.
Exactly.
They would have been able to really lean on. I think that probably would have been intrinsic in the marketing, honestly, like a Kamala win.
Yeah.
It's depressing to think of what could have been on so many levels.
Well, and I just want to add, this is like the Scream 4 ending, the movie that doesn't end. There's like a million endings. If I Know What You Did Last Summer, it does not do well, people. I don't want people to be sad. I'm wishing it so much love. I'm so excited. I'm so genuinely excited for I Know What You Did Last Summer. And I know that I represent the very niche person who is obsessed with late 90s horror, and has a podcast about it. And I know that I'm not everybody, but I hope that it does well. But if it doesn't, and we only get this movie, and I think that it could be like Scream 5. I imagine if Scream 5 had been there had been no Scream 6 or 7. I think Scream 5 would have been a nice reunion, kind of revisiting the old, being some new, having just a check-in, which I think that could be I Know What You Did Last Summer if there is no sequel. So don't fret if I Know What You Did Last Summer isn't a smashing success like Scream 5. But
Can I ask you one question real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
Just to keep this officially from ending, who, if either of the returning cast, do you think might die? And I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Freddie.
But also, I kind of hope they keep him alive. We love Freddie Prinze Jr. and I don't really need him to die. I mean, I Know What You Did Last Summer, the fishing hook and whatever. I don't know why, but it's just very hard for any of it to feel super heightened and emotional for me. It feels a little bit more ridiculous. I don't know. I think that's part of my struggle with the franchise. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna show up and support, but I don't know that we need the emotional weight of losing Freddie for the movie to work for me.
Right. And I think here's one thing I'll say about I Know What She Did Last Summer. I think that Jennifer Caitlin Robinson, she is very online. She is very aware of the conversations we're having. She's the director of I Know and writer. Yeah. She knows, and I think that she's very tuned in to the culture. I think she's tuned into what worked about Scream 5 and 6 and what didn't. And I think this is also a result of Jennifer Love Hewitt really holding out. I think that she bargained for a better role. I think that we're actually going to see actually a stealthy Julie. I wouldn't even be surprised if she has double the screen time of Nev. The Nev of Scream 5, I think that Julie could have up to double the screen time in I Know What You Did Last Summer. I think she's going to be really important just based on the negotiations and how painful Jennifer Love Hewitt made it for the studio, who was trying to kind of really make her insignificant. I mean, like literally, they shot the entire movie up until all the non-Julie scenes they had finished before she had even signed on, which is like so cool. I mean, I have to say, Jennifer Love Hewitt, you are a badass for doing that. So I think that we're going to see something really good come from Julie. I will say this, just from I've heard from people who have seen it, and this is not spoilers, but this is not going to be Scream 5 milquetoast. I think there's going to be some bigger swings taken in this movie. Again, going back to what I just said about Jennifer Caitlin Robinson, I think she's aware that potentially people look at Scream 5 and 6 and see milquetoast. They see no real stakes. They see the fact that, 6 surviving characters each got a big death scene and no one actually died, right? In Scream 6. Or like, looking at Scream 5 and thinking, ooh, maybe it was a mistake to kill Dewey. So I think like she's aware of the conversations, but from what I've heard, there's a huge swing that I Know She Did Last Summer takes. And I think that it could even be divisive. Maybe that will lead to a cultural conversation. Maybe that will allow the movie to have some legs. So I think that it could be very, very cool. So we just have to give it a chance. So, and we're on like the, in Scream 4, there's like the ending at Kirby's house, there's the ending at the hospital, then there's the alternative ending, which is the trio in the hospital the next day with Sydney in bed. She's happy, and Gail saying, I'm going to write a new book, blah, blah, blah. They're eating the lemon squares. We're at that stage of the podcast here. So Josh, as it relates to Scream 7, do you think that we have anything to worry about as it pertains to the M3GAN flop and the potential? Let's just say I Know What You Did Last Summer doesn't do well, because I can already picture the fucking headlines, can't you? Like, I Know What You Did Last Summer comes in less than 10 million. Oh my God, Scream 7 is over. This spells disaster for Scream 7.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I just don't think that when it comes to, I feel like it's apples and oranges. That's how I would put it. Final Destination into M3GAN is enough of a proof point for me. Again, it's like there's always going to be this sort of immeasurable element within these kind of like IP eventized movies. I think Scream is in far better standing and in a better position than I Know What You Did Last Summer to make like a huge splash, because it's already proved that it could do it with 5 and 6, and that's not long ago. I think it has a lot going for it. There is a little bit of an element of a subset of its fan base feeling betrayed by the direction it's going in, but I think the vast majority of the fan base feels the other way, and that it has the potential to bring people back into the fold who maybe weren't even really present for 4, 5, and 6. So, it's going to be up to them. It's going to be about how good of a film they end up with and how they figure out ways to get people really excited and make people feel like this isn't something that they want to miss out on in theaters. So I still feel like they have just as good of a chance, regardless of what happens with I Know What You Did Last Summer. I do think we will all feel slightly more bullish just because they've always been in conversation with each other, right? They're like the Britney and Christina of horror from that era.
Okay, so I need to ask, what is your favorite Britney Spears song?
My favorite? I mean, it's like, if I'm being honest, the one that just had me in a chokehold, like in real time when it came out and that particular era, was Oops, I Did It Again. But Give Me More is like very high on my list. Even though the era that ushered in was not one of the best for Britney. But there are a ton of deep cuts, like what you and Ashley do with Taylor, like I could do with Britney, because I know like every single song on every album, even the terrible ones that she wrote herself.
Oh my God. Well, I actually grew up, I like, when I say grew up, I mean literally like kindergarten, like through elementary school, obsessed with Britney. And my mom actually took me to see Crossroads in theaters. So I love Britney Spears a lot. I'm not encyclopedic, but I do have like, just very fond memories of that. So
I like her song Cinderella a lot. I like Shattered Glass. I'm trying to think of ones that are less like obvious. I kind of have grown to resent Toxic just because straight people love it. So it's like the only one that gets played.
Cultural appropriation is what I say right there.
Yeah. No, it's ours. Like, leave it alone. No, but it's just like every time you're out, if you're going to hear a Britney song, it's going to be Toxic, because for whatever reason, everyone's decided it has this like cool factor that doesn't carry the sort of like cheesiness of like the late 90s, early 2000s pop music. So yeah, but on Crossroads, real fast, like one of the things I love about that, and Zoe Saldana in particular, talking about that experience, like she always just says how incredible Britney was to work with and how kind she was. And I think like that's one of the things about Britney that will kind of always live on, is she's just like, you'd never hear anyone say a bad thing about working with her. So
Right.
I think that's why like culturally we all sort of root for her to like have the happiest next chapter of her life possible, given how horribly sort of abused she was by her family.
Right. Well, I agree with everything, co-sign for sure. And I love Britney Spears. Maybe we'll have to do like a Britney Spears segment someday. So, and you can be in charge of that.
I
So.
would love Britney to be cast in one of these like franchise reboots, because she's not a bad actress and it would be kind of iconic. Like, you want to talk about creating an event? Like, imagine if Britney was like playing one of the moms and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Like, it would be like there every day opening weekend.
Josh, thank you so much. Where can they find you online?
Just Instagram at Josh G. Reinhold.
Now we're going to go through our ranking of the Taylor Swift albums. Oh my gosh. Okay, so how this is going to go, we're going to treat this like a speed round, but I'm allowing, so my friend Jacob, he says like I'm kind of like the warden when it comes to time, and I admit it, but it is what it is. You have to keep pace. So we're just going to like say like a little comment about the album as we go through, but we're doing this in the same style that Garrison and Sam had us do it on their show. Mark, how about you kick us off?
My number 11 is Debut, or Taylor Swift. Yeah. I love that album. I've been Taylor's fan since 2006.
My number 11 is Lover. I love every single one of these albums. It's really hard for me to put them in an order. I think Lover is just the one that, if I had to pick one that I don't gravitate towards as often, it's that. But I think it's a beautiful album about anxiety and love, and there's nothing wrong with it.
Oh my gosh.
I feel bad. I'm like, I'm sorry, Lover.
I'm sorry, Taylor. I don't mean to bring any of that blast. So, no, my number 11 is Debut. I just don't really listen to this one, and I'm really excited to hear the re-record of what she sounds like now, and I think there's a really good songwriting on it, especially for her first splash. So, okay, number 10.
Number 10 is Lover. It's just not I love that album. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt right now. It's a Lover era shirt, but it's not an album I go back to that often. I mean, I do every now and again put on I Forgot That You Existed, because I just love that song. I just love the way that it opens up the album. There's no bad Taylor album.
Well, I also enjoy like the pettiness of I Forgot You Existed. So whenever I need to be petty, I text Mark. Whenever I take the high road, though, I text Ashley, and she's like, "Oh, Ryan, I'm so proud of you." So, okay.
I encourage
Maybe that's
petty.
why I don't connect to it, is because the thought of being petty like just like makes my skin feel uncomfortable, because I'm like, I don't want to do that.
You are the least petty person.
I enjoy it.
Like, I have the most petty person and the least petty person of my friends. Like, so this is funny. Ash, number 10.
My number 10 is Fearless. I love this album. It's like so perfect for the time that it came out. Unfortunately, there's just albums that I love a little bit more as they came out. But I mean, this is her second album, and I still listen to it all the time. And I'm 37. It means it's good.
My number 10 is 1989, and this is a masterpiece. Like, this is objectively her masterpiece album. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's like it is like Scream 1. Okay, I'm sorry, Ash, I'm sorry, but so, and like all of the big songs are here. I mean, it's perfect. It's just I don't relate to it as much as I relate to other albums. But my number 10, the last time we did this, Ash, in December, is now my number 4. So there's always room for ebbs and flows. So, okay, number 9. Mark.
My number 9 is Taylor's second album, Fearless. That was the first album ever that I tried to go find for a midnight release. I remember I sat there every time Taylor released a new single for that. I still have all on my iTunes. I still have the original single covers for those songs that she put out. And I don't know why I always thought Change came out before Love Story, but I know it didn't. But for some reason, I had that Mandela effect going on that Change came first, but it didn't, according to the internet.
Okay. Ash, how about you?
Mine is Speak Now. Ryan's going to laugh at me, because literally when we were doing this the other week, I kept, every time it came to me, I'd be like, I love this album, because I do. And like, I can't think of anything bad to say about any of them. But Speak Now is so beautiful, and it's so fun, and there's something that's so magical about this album. My favorite songs are probably Sparks Fly and Long Live. And if you haven't heard those, I highly recommend you do. They're just a little lovey-dovey and super fun.
Okay. My number 9 is Reputation. And this is hard because like Reputation used to be my top 5 again. Like it just influx. Living breathing document is my ranking, but Reputation is stunning. It fills me up with all the badass energy I need sometimes. And it's so interesting because there's badass, but there's also genuine expressions of like vulnerable love. So but the pain around this album is very cathartic for me. So yeah, I love it. Okay. Number 8, Mark.
My number 8 is Evermore. I love the album. I mean, I loved seeing it on the Eras tour. I wish it got its own moment with Folklore, like a full tour, like a Folklore Evermore tour. But
Ash, tell us your number 8 and tell us why you love it.
Debut. I love this album because it just takes me back to being a teenager. There's literally a song about liking a boy named Drew who talks about talks about his girlfriend to you, even though you have a big crush on him. And I liked a boy named Drew when this song came out, and he would just talk about this girl all the time. Like I can't even imagine how perfect she is. Still to this day, I'm like, does she fart cotton candy? I don't understand. Like she sounded like the most beautiful person on the entire planet. But Debut will always be one of my favorites. I think the rumor has it that she's going to put out like an anniversary album because she had re-recorded this already with some hopeful vault tracks, aka I'd Lie. I want it so bad, but it's definitely a little country bumpkin, this album.
Yeah. No, I love it, and I am excited for the re-record. So you're right on point there. So, all right, my number 8 is Lover, and like for me, this is underrated. Speaking of, since we have a number 10 and a number 11 here, so I'm giving it 8, and I really cracked the code on this because like Ashley mentioned that it's about anxiety. It's about like being in love and trying to move forward, but you're very insecure, and that is something that speaks to me as an adult in a big way. So I love Lover, and I find the song list to be pretty solid despite the obvious flaws. So cool. Number 7, Mark.
number 7 is Red. I just love that album so much. The first album that came out when I first, I think it came out the day before me and my husband got together on it, because me and my husband got together on his birthday, and it came out October 20th, the day before we got together. So that the song Begin Again and Starlight used to like haunt me. Every time I would turn the car on, Starlight were playing. And the day before we got married, I did karaoke and I sang Begin Again.
Aw, love it. Oh my
It was the
God.
day before we got married, yeah.
So cool. Love it, Mark. I am in a Begin Again era right now, so we love it because like the original version. Oh my God, so good.
Yeah.
Okay, Ash, what is your number 7 and why do you love it?
Well, mine has changed even in the past couple weeks. I'm gonna put the Tortured Poets department here.
Okay.
Again, as Ryan is making fun of me, I love this album. I think if I could say they're all perfect, I would. If I could hold them if I could turn them into children, I would adopt them all. I love them. I'm talking to them like they're actual people. I love this album so much. I think it's so special. I feel like it is just like this. Like I imagine this like lady just like scribbling all of her thoughts and like just like throwing it into like something that makes music, like a music generator, and she's just putting it out, and then she's like, "Oh, okay, I'm good now." Like I just feel like it's like this cathartic feeling, and as soon as she got it out, like the feelings were able to like disappear, if that's you know what I mean. Like I feel like the anger that's in this album isn't as intensely and strong in the person who wrote them now that we're all able to listen to them together. It feels like cathartic, this album.
That is the best a description of Tortured Poets I've ever heard. It's about a woman who angrily scribbled down every thought she had and that is amazing. Oh my God. My number 7 is Fearless. Again, I find Fearless to be underrated. It's such like, even though it won album of the year, it's just like in retrospect, it always kind of floats down to the bottom for a lot of people. But for me, I love the production of it. I love the clear theme and the idea of like boldness and the youth and the optimism. And there are bops on this album. When I say bops, I mean, I'm listening to Hey Steven and I am like jamming. Like it's ridiculous. So, okay. We're halfway. All right. Number 6, Mark, take us away.
Number 6 is Midnights, which another fun birthday connection is that it actually came out on my husband's birthday and it was announced the day before my birthday. But wow. I mean, technically, if you think about it, she announced the actual album at midnight, so it was on my birthday, the 29th of August, but she did it at the award show technically, so it's the day before.
Love it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that album has a special place in my heart just because the connections there.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. It's like she did it just for you.
Yeah, birthday present.
Mine is also Midnights. Um,
Ooh.
this album is so fun. Everyone can relate to those things that keep them up at night, that even though they might not like throughout the day, or you might not even think about them for years, but all of a sudden a memory is like in your brain and you're thinking about all of the what ifs and all of the what did I do wrong? What did they do wrong? How could this have been different? And I love this album. I feel like you're getting a bunch of different stories and learning. And I feel like you can kind of figure out what album maybe each one of these songs could have been on in the past or where it might fit. It feels like you're giving a bunch of puzzle pieces that make the other albums whole and you're trying to figure out where they go or something. I love this album so much. I think it's so fun. It's a really fun album to introduce people to Taylor Swift with because I think people don't imagine this is what she sounds like. And if you haven't heard You're on Your Own, Kid, go listen to it, please. Just go listen to it. It's such a beautiful song, and I think everybody can relate to it.
Literally every single person, even every person in those football stadiums who doesn't like Taylor for some stupid reason, you would relate to that song. So absolutely, you idiot. Okay, you idiot meaning like the football person who hates Taylor, not Ashley. Just being
Yeah,
clear.
I was just like, oh shit.
Okay. All right. So my number 6 is Folklore, and this used to be my favorite a long time ago, and it's just faded as I've discovered and like really fallen in love with others. It's very deep, it's spiritual, it has wonderful instruments. It's very brave and it's dynamic goals, and like I just, there's a lot of beautiful songwriting on here, and it was a huge moment for her to pivot to something different. So we love it. All right. So Mark, number 5.
My number 5 is actually Folklore.
Nice.
Folklore, just that album that feels like the breakup album that I needed 10 years prior, and like kind of wrote it for me to help get over what I had gone through back then when I had just Speak Now. But yeah, Folklore always gonna have that special place just because of when it came out. We all kind of needed this album during COVID.
We did. Yeah, you're right about that. Ash.
My number 5 is Red. Last time we did a ranking, I think I put her too low, and I literally have been up at night thinking about it, which is silly. And something that you shouldn't have anxiety about, but I do.
I love it.
And I'm like, I offended it. But All Too Well is my favorite song of all time. Taking Taylor out of it, if I could only pick one, it would be the one. And my partner, he said that one of like the best moments of his life was watching me watch her sing this and when we got to go to the Eras tour together, because he was like, I've never seen anybody look so happy. But I was like kind of like sobbing, and I like don't even really remember it happening because I think I blacked out of it. But when I got to go the second time to the Eras tour, because I pretty much spent my life savings to go. I collected confetti from during like all like I tried to get as much confetti as I could, and I like yelled at my sister, I was like, "Go get the leaf!" Because they have like these like leaves that and then like snow that comes out during the 10-minute version. And I think this album is one of the best breakup albums of all time, and I love how it goes from being heartbroken to being put back together, and it's just everybody I think could find a song on Red that speaks to them, and I think that's why I love it. It's just like so I feel like she was really getting into her groove in this album.
For sure. And I just feel like there's a vault track somewhere of Ashley. Like, that Taylor wrote Midnights for like the sleepless nights, what she's thinking about at night. And Ashley's version of that is putting Red too low on her rank. What keeps you up at night? So speaking of Midnights, I am putting Midnights at my number 5. I love Midnights. I just think it's such a cool album. It's so full of style. It's fierce. It's inventive. It's very imaginative in terms of the topics she covers with the songs. It just feels hip and artsy, and we love that. And it's not necessarily like what she's saying, because it is. It's always what she's saying, because she always has something brilliant to say. It's how she's saying it, which is cool. So there's a lot of depth there and some of the best songs ever. So, okay. Number 4, Mark.
My number 4 is the Tortured Poets Department.
Yay.
Still love that album. Still listen to it daily. Another fun fact, it came out on my mom's birthday.
Time. Yeah.
Taylor is like running Mark's life.
Pretty much. She has been since 2006. But yeah, the Tortured Poets Department, I just love that album so much. She put all her heart and soul and pain into those songs, and you can hear it through a lot of them. And I love, one of my favorite songs on that is Fortnite, of course, because I love Post Malone too. I was just so happy to finally get a song with them together.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm happy to hear the TTPD love here. So, all right, Ash, how about you?
Mine is Folklore. Folklore is just like you're sitting around, like I always think about it like sitting around like a campfire and having somebody tell all these stories, and they might not be about them, or they might be about their friend, or completely made up, or whatever it is, but they're so beautifully written and so beautifully told that you connect to all of them and you relate. I love how there's songs that feel really young, and there's songs that feel like you have to have the oldest soul in the entire world to have written it. I think it's so beautiful. And one of like when I think back to around this time in like March 2020, I was sitting around a table with a bunch of managers of the place that I work. And we were all talking about how like this is really weird. What's going on? What are we gonna do? And then somebody said, so aren't you guys kind of excited to see what kind of music gets put out? Like what kind of art comes from this? Like if everybody has to be in their houses. She was like, I'm trying to find any silver lining. And I think about that every single time I think about this album, because I don't think we would have got it without that. And obviously I'm not weighing those things together because obviously one's horrific, but it is a silver lining in all of that pain is finding some sort of art that you related to, whether it's folklore or something else. I just feel really grateful that we got that album when we did, because I think so many of us needed a little something during that time, and she definitely gave us a little gift.
Well, I love that. And I think that's so true about that time, that moment in time. So my number 4 is Speak Now. And it's a very writerly album. This is the only album she wrote completely by herself, which is so cool. And it touches me in a very, because of the central theme. Like, in my view, it's about coming into your own for better or worse. It's about like finding your voice and kind of being afraid to grow up. Like you're at that stage where you're kind of an adult, but still kind of a kid. And like you're more of an adult than you're a kid. And like you're kind of like, you're growing up in a way. So I really relate to Speak Now in a lot of ways. So anyways, okay, number 3, Mark.
Number 3 is Reputation, which I'm so happy I get to listen to again. One of my favorite albums. I know exactly where I was when she dropped that snake tail. I was in Madeiras, Oregon, watching the solar eclipse.
Right. Okay.
And then right after that she posted the tail, and then it was just from there she was reclaiming that reputation.
Love it. Love it. Oh my gosh. Okay. Ash, number 3.
Mine is Evermore. Like I said, I got to go to the Eras Tour twice, which means I got to see the 2 different variations of it. So I did get to see Evermore when it had its own moment, and so I got to see Tolerate It, and which I think is one of the best songs ever in the history of the world. No one else can have a different opinion. It's perfect. Just kidding. But I love Evermore. I think it's just like any song where you can go, I mean, any album where you can go from kind of like celebrating something to like literally writing a song about like a murder mystery. Like you've got me, sold. Like No Body, No Crime is one of my favorite songs ever. I love it so much because it's just exactly what I imagine like her if she wrote like a little mystery, like if she wrote one of those like cheesy Hallmark mysteries, what it would be like, or a really good book. One or the other, a really cheesy version or like a really good, amazing like mystery novel. But I love how there's so many like playing on words in Evermore, and it's so fun. And Folklore and Evermore, like they have to go together. So I had to put them beside each other.
Well, Ash, mine is also Evermore for number 3. And from my opinion, this is
We
the
agree.
best, right? We agree finally, I know. So I feel like this is the best writing of her career by far. Every song is a home run. Every lyric is so crisp and thoughtful and just like, and really focuses them with a specific theme that's very haunting. And it's about like the longing for something and like the end of something, which I really connect to. So I love me some Evermore. So, okay, people, top 2, number 2, Mark.
My number 2 is 1989. I think the reason it moved up so much for me was Taylor's version. I don't know. Anytime I put on Style, this is gonna be probably not a very happy opinion for some people, but every time I put on Style Taylor's version, it just does something to my ears and it makes me happy. I love the original one, but there's just something different about the style that Taylor's version that I just love so much.
I love it. Aw. All right, Ash.
Mine is Reputation. I love this album so much. It is so fun and fierce and gritty. And to me, it's her most like lovey-dovey album. Like so many people think it's angry. And I'm like, well, yeah, there's some songs where she's clearly pissed off, or rightfully so. But I think the most like loving out like songs that we've gotten so far are on this album,
Yeah.
that are the most like genuine love, like Delicate and King of My Heart. I think they're just like really genuinely like sweet love at that beginning of a relationship. I do think soon we could be getting a pretty lovey-dovey album, but I think this album is so fun. I like the duality of it kind of reminds me of a Gemini. Like they have like this like angsty thing, and then they have this like really like there's like these different personalities that are coming out in this album. And I think it's what she needed to say after everything that happened. And like no one's ever gonna hear me say a bad word about this album. And like if you've ever seen like the Reputation concert, it is so fun, y'all. It is so fun. There's a giant snake. We named it Karen. It is just so fun, and the lore of Reputation is just so intense, and it was just such a fun time. And Getaway Car is one of my favorite songs ever, and the combination of her and Jack Antonoff writing that song.
Well, I love it. I wish I had been there. And I've seen the movie, of course, and you know, so I have FOMO about Reputation era. Okay,
I wasn't there. I've
so
just seen the movie.
I
Oh my
was
gosh.
there.
Mark's like, I
Shut
was
up.
there.
It was
Go
it
away.
was so good. It was the concert I took my nieces to.
Aw, that's so fun.
All right. So my number 2 is the Tortured Poets Department. This is such a magnificent achievement, and it's like exactly the type of like sad girl, angry girl that I am on the inside. You know, I think it's very complex and honest. Like it's really like academic in a way, and just how deep it is. And it should be studied. So I love it so much. All right, number 1, favorite albums here. Mark, hit me with it.
My number 1 has been the same number 1 since 2010. It's Speak Now. The album was there for me when felt like I kind of didn't have anybody, and I knew I could always listen to it and feel like I had someone there with me whenever I was going through a breakup, which I was at the time. But it's just, yeah, that album kind of just like goes from, you know, the Mine into Back to December and then to the end of it to Long Live, and just is that album that kind of helped keep me here.
Well, Mark, I love you. Whenever I think of Speak Now, I think of you. So thank you. And tell everybody where they can find you online.
You can find me at Swifty across all social media. Made it easy.
And we love being on brand for the episode. All right. Ash, what is your number 1?
My number 1 favorite album of all time, doesn't matter who it is 1989. Similar to Mark, like this album was just like my best friend for a while. There was a time in my life where I was just so sad that I didn't even want to listen to music, because the thought of like stirring any more emotion inside myself, I just would have felt like I was going to start sobbing. So I would just listen to like audiobooks and like, unfortunately, like the Dane Cook like concerts and like or like performances, or like really bad stand-up comedy. Like found 1989 when I really needed her. I think it is one of the best pop albums ever written. And I think like it actually has been coined to be one of that by like actual music reviewers, even though I take Swifties' opinions, like I like hearing their opinions a lot more than some random dude or women in an office. But I think this album is just so incredibly fun. I think it's really coming of age. And yes, Mark, it is crazy to say Style, Taylor's version is better. That is nuts.
Sorry.
But that's okay. We all can
I
have
still
a
love
different
the
opinion.
original.
I'm just joking. I know. I think it is like it's Style is one of those songs that like you can immediately tell the difference between the two of them as soon as like it starts playing.
Yeah.
Whereas other songs, sometimes I have to be able to hear her voice before I can. But but I love this album so much, and she's just my best friend. I know it sounds cheesy, but this album is just my bestie. I love her so much. And having the original version, I literally cried, and my partner was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I'm just so happy I have her back," because I just like felt like I couldn't, like I could listen to it, but not in the same way. And we blasted it for like a good solid week anytime we went anywhere.
Well, that's amazing. I'm happy for you, Ash. And like I think like it's so funny because like and 1989 is technically a little lower on my ranking, and like but my number 1 you said is like the Ryan album, and like your number 1 is, you know, 1989 is the Ashley album, and that's fun. And I guess Speak Now is the Mark album. So we all have our albums here. But so my number 1 is Red. It's my GOAT. It's incredible, and especially the re-record. But I've really fallen in love with the original as well. You know, the vault tracks are elite. Every single song on this album is worthy. It's easy to listen to, and it's on point thematically with what she's trying to say and do. And I love how Ashley described it as someone going through a devastating heartbreak that teaches you some really harsh lessons at a young age. Like everyone goes through this moment, and it's about like rebuilding yourself from all that devastation. And I think it's just so great. So anyways, so There it is, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us for the premiere of Scream with Ryan C. Showers season 5. So, Ashley, Mark, you guys are the best. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just
Thank
put a
you.
request that when we post for this song or this episode, everybody, after you've listened to this, can you please go tell us what your favorite Taylor Swift album is?
Please do.
Because I just want to see, because everybody's going to have a different one, and that's what's so fun about it. I mean, you can even put your ranking in the comments or just DM them to me. I don't care. I will.
I want to know
happy
too.
listen. Yeah. Tell us.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back!